Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Magenta Edge Digital Workshop Series. I'm Jewel Burke-Solomon, the head of Google for Startups in the US and managing partner of Collab Capital. This is workshop 7 of 8. Every Thursday for the past 2 months, we've been having workshops about different facets of the small business experience. And we're so excited to have you here for this workshop on navigating barriers to entrepreneurship. To see all the articles and stories on Magenta Edge, or to register for the last workshop coming up next week, make sure you visit tmobile.com/magentaedge. T-Mobile for Business will be live tweeting this entire workshop. So if you want to be a part of the conversation, make sure you tap that Twitter icon on your dashboard so that you can join in on the conversation. And make sure you use the hashtag MagentaEdge. All right, so all of that, we've paid our bills, gone through all the protocols. So again, I'm so excited to be with you guys today. Really quickly, I just want to go over what we're going to cover in this session, and let's just dive right into it. So again, this session is all about navigating systemic barriers to entrepreneurship. And today, I'm going to give you guys a brief introduction of me so you know who is talking to you for the next hour or so. We're going to talk about how you can anticipate and recognize barriers. We're going to discuss overcoming funding ecosystem barriers in particular. We're going to talk about overcoming procurement barriers. And lastly, we're going to touch on how to build mental fortitude in this process. This is, in my opinion, the most important part because this is what you're going to need on your journey for entrepreneurship. So if you guys are ready, we are going to dive right on in. So again, in case you forgot, I am Jewel Burke-Solomon. I am someone who has spent the last decade, over a decade, in the technology industry. I've worn many hats. I've done everything from sell software to manage a call center, to be a startup CEO, and now I am an investor. So I've kind of done just about everything you can think of in the technology industry. And in this journey, you know, I have now come to this place where I am leading Google for Startups in the US, where I'm really focused on helping to bring the best of Google's products, people, and best practices to emerging startup ecosystems and specifically to underrepresented founders. I am also one of the managing partners at Collab Capital, which is an early stage investment fund focused on funding the best and brightest Black entrepreneurs across the country working on tech and tech-enabled businesses. And, you know, all of these things together is why I'm here today talking to you about navigating barriers. Because the truth is that over the last decade of my career, I've certainly come across many barriers. And I want to share with you today some of the things that I've learned, some tips and tricks to really navigate and get around some of these barriers. So let's dive into that. Want to give you a little bit also about my journey into investing in particular. So, and this will kind of give us a place to start for, you know, why navigating barriers is so important. So, my experience as a startup founder is really why I am an investor today. I started my first business, PartPick, at the age of 23. I had an idea. I was working at the time in the industrial distribution industry of all places, and I saw that there was a big problem as it related to people being able to locate the products that they wanted to purchase from the company that I was working for. So kind of had this light bulb, Oprah calls it an aha moment, and thought, you know, what if people could just take a picture of the part that they want to purchase and use that as the catalyst for their search? So I had that idea, and that idea would not let me rest. I became pretty much obsessed with solving that particular problem. And at the same time, I had a personal story which really kind of pushed me over the edge to go after that idea. My grandfather was in the middle of a harvest we have a family farm in Repton, Alabama, a very small town. And he could not find a part for his tractor. His tractor had broken down. He called me to try to locate a part for it, could not find it. And that to me was really like, okay, I have to go after this problem. I have to solve this problem because I don't want my Papa Bill or anyone else's grandfather, for that matter, to have to struggle with finding the parts that they may need for a project. So that was really the seed that was planted. I started to do a lot of research. I started to put together a team that could help me build. I was able to, with that team, build groundbreaking technology where you could just take a picture of a part and we tell you what it is and where you can buy it. We were able to get some incredible customers, and we did all of these things, kind of textbook of what you're supposed to do when you start a company. But we could still had a difficult time in raising funding. So ultimately, we were able to raise a little over $2 million, which might sound okay, it might sound good, but for the company that we were building and the space that we were in, that wasn't a lot of money. And the reality is that in this process and in that journey, I faced a lot of barriers. I'm talking about every way I turned, it felt like there was someone or something or some force that was trying to not allow me to get to the next step or the next goal. And so that experience really, which, as I look back on it and think about it, really had to do with things that I could not control. A lot of the conversations and difficult meetings that I had with investors or even with customers sometimes were really tied to the facts of my identity. A lot of times people could not wrap their mind around the fact that, at the time I was this 23-year-old or 24-year-old Black woman talking about computer vision technology in the industrial distribution space. That was kind of outlandish and crazy for people to understand or comprehend. And so I really kind of got to this point where I said, okay, if I ever get on the other side of this journey, I am going to make sure that the facts of someone's identity don't keep them from achieving the goals that they're trying to go after. And so I made a little vow to myself that if I ever made it on the other side of part pick of that journey, that I would become the investor that I wish I had. I would become that support system that I wish I had. So that's really what led me to investing, because I felt like, when I was on my journey, I didn't encounter enough people who looked like me and who would believe me. It would believe that there was nothing about my identity that would keep me from being successful in the space that I was targeting. So that was really kind of the genesis for me to now be doing what I'm doing, focused on helping startups. And I'm fortunate that I had the opportunity to sell my business in 2016 to Amazon, and now be in a position where I can invest and give back to folks like yourselves, hopefully, that are building great businesses. So that is my backstory. That is why I'm here. And that is why I'm so excited to share more about how when you come into contact with barriers, you can easily, well, maybe not easily, but you can have the tools to navigate them. So the first thing is that you kind of have to anticipate that barriers are going to come. The reality is, if you are signed up to be an entrepreneur, you are going to face barriers. That is just the facts. Okay, so a lot of people say entrepreneurs are a little bit off. They signed up for a journey that's going to be a little bit difficult. So the sooner you understand that barriers will come, the better you will be equipped to overcome them. So just know that it's not anything that is off or not normal. It is completely normal that you will anticipate, that you will see barriers on your journey. One thing I want to acknowledge is that barriers exist, for reasons that are unfortunate. We live in a society, no matter where you're kind of joining from, it's likely that you have seen, you witnessed, especially over the last year, the fact that we are still living in a world where there is racism. We are still living in a world where there is sexism. All the isms, ageism, there is a lot that is built into the society that we live in today. And that is unfortunate, but it is the truth. It is, they say it is what it is. And one thing that I think helps is recognition and acknowledgement of that fact. It's kind of like once you come to an understanding that that is the truth, then it's easier to grapple with it and to move forward from there. So, like I said, the reality is the barriers exist. They exist across the board in just about any industry that you find yourself in. You will notice that some of these systemic barriers are present. But today we're going to talk about two particular places where you might find these barriers, and we're going to talk about how can you overcome them in those places. So these places I think are top of mind for most entrepreneurs, and they are funding, ecosystem, so where you go to find money for your company. I'm sure that is probably very important to most people watching here. So we'll talk about funding bias and where does that come from, and why does it exist, and how do we get around it? And then the next is procurement. So procurement is all about how do you work with organizations or companies to help them to know about and purchase your products. Sometimes that involves bidding, sometimes that involves certifications, and we know that there are still biases that exist in that process as well. So we'll talk about that and talk about some tools to overcome it. And then lastly, like I said, what I think is the most important for all of this is really building up your mental toughness or your grit or your fortitude around taking on these challenges and knowing that you can still press forward, you can still achieve your goals, even in the midst of the unfortunate biases that exist in our society. All right, so let's dive into lesson number 1. And this is all about how do we overcome funding bias. So I can tell you this process of raising money has been a big part of my life for the last 7 or 8 years now, from the time that I started PartPick and tried to figure out how do I fund this big idea that I have, up until right now, this very day. I'm in the process right now of closing a $50 million fund. So I have been fundraising a lot. And I can share with you that through this journey of raising millions of dollars, I have certainly encountered barriers to get there. It's the first time around when I was raising money for PartPick, I had over 200 meetings and I only ended up with 20 investors. So that means that I had somewhere in the neighborhood of 180 people to say no. And that will happen, and that's okay. It didn't stop me from getting done what I needed to get done. Similarly, with raising money for a fund, it's the same thing. I have to really talk to a lot of people just to get to the people that are going to believe in the vision and say yes. So I just mentioned this to say that it is inevitable when you enter into the process of fundraising that you will see barriers. You will see people who don't believe that you can do what you say you're going to do. And your responsibility as the founder, the CEO, the person that has to keep money in the bank is to believe that you can and keep going. A few other tools outside of belief in yourself, you also want to find catalysts. So it's great for you to believe in what you're doing, to be able to tell the story and tell the pitch, but you also have to get other people to do it on your behalf, maybe when you're not in the room. So you want to identify folks who can tell your story for you and about you, and speak to the greatness that you are when you're not there. You also want to identify resources. So one thing and one mistake that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make, and even that I made myself, is that I was very adamant about raising money when I first started my business. and didn't realize that there are so many other opportunities outside of giving away equity in your company, something like grants or pitch competitions, or non-dilutive resources that will really be helpful to get you to those next milestones. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the last piece is, I'm excited. I want to do a visioning exercise with you all, because sometimes you don't have to get funding for your business. And a lot of that has to do with what is the future vision that you see for what you're building. So we'll do a little fun visioning exercise to understand what's the actual right fit as it relates to funding. Where should you be going? What makes sense for your business? And that knowing that will help you to really navigate the barriers that might exist. All right, so are y'all still with me? Everyone good? Okay, so we are going to talk about this idea of a flywheel. So hopefully you guys have heard this term of flywheel. Flywheel became popular. I think it was first sort of, the concept came about in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. If you haven't read the book, it's a kind of like classic business book. But he talks about flywheels in this idea that no great feat or no great action has happened with one single action. It's typically a series of small actions moving in one direction, kicking off momentum that really makes big things happen. So if you think about visualize kind of the flywheel, and this idea, the flywheel being a heavy wheel that you can't just push all at once. You have to give small pushes to help it build momentum, and to the point where it kicks off and begins to turn on its own. That's really what you're trying to create. And I became really familiar with this idea of flywheel during my time at Amazon. I mentioned I sold my business to Amazon and then spent some time at Amazon. And one of the things that is core to the business at Amazon is this flywheel around customers. So they care a lot about making prices low so that more customers come on the site. And then leveraging sellers so that more customers have more things to buy. And then using the additional money that's coming in from customers to pay for additional servers, and kind of all of these tiny actions leading up to the huge company that is Amazon, and each of these actions feeding into the next. So that's just an example of what a flywheel is and that kind of principle. But today we're going to apply it to the themes of this session. So the fundraising flywheel is something that I made up, but we're going to go with it. And what does it mean? So the first thing is you have to build something of value. That is your job. Your first job as an entrepreneur is to really create something that people need, that people want, that people will pay for. That is something that you have to do as an entrepreneur. And that really kicks off this fundraising flywheel. When you have something that is of value, that you can demonstrate the value around, then it's a lot easier to get people excited about it and to do the next part of the flywheel, which is to activate evangelists. So this idea is you are just one person. You probably can't talk to everyone you need to talk to about your company or about what you're building. So you want to get other people excited about it so that they will talk to other people, and those people will talk to other people, and you can kind of build this momentum, or as a term that is used a lot is FOMO, kind of fear of missing out on your deal or what you're doing. You want to equip other people to be able to tell the story for you. And then from there, you have to follow up. This is the probably second most important part, in my opinion, of the flywheel. And it's the part where people mostly mess up. And honestly, I messed up. I think there was a lot of sort of money left on the table in my fundraising journey because of sorry, hopefully you guys can still hear me, because of not following up. So just want to make sure that you guys remember that you have to build something of value. From there, you activate people to talk about that thing you built. And then lastly, you have got to follow up with people. And all of these things together create the momentum that you need to put together a fundraising round, if that's what you're going after, to really get people excited about what you're doing and how they should be joining you on the journey of what you're doing. All right. The next thing is, the reality is only a very, very small percentage of businesses raise money. And when I talk about raise money, what I'm saying is you have an agreement either with an angel investor or a venture capitalist to sell a portion of your business, so a piece of equity, in exchange for help and dollars. That is one way to go. But again, only a small percentage of businesses are a good fit for that type of funding pathway. And only a small percentage of businesses actually have success on that funding pathway. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of all of the non-dilutive resources that are available. And honestly, a lot of these are much lower friction, and therefore you won't have to have as many barriers to entry to get to them. So one is grants. I did not know when I was building PartPick until probably a year or so in about all of the governmental research grants that are available for people who are building companies that are scientific in nature or have some type of research component. So this is a huge thing that I wish I had known earlier in my journey, because you can get up to $1 million, I think in some cases up to $2 million in non-dilutive. You're going to hear me say this word a lot. It's really my favorite type of funding, where you don't have to give up any equity. Again, if you're doing something that has a research component, or where you can get proximate to a research university, this is a great way to get early funding for your business. SBIR and STTR are the acronyms to know, and you can go to sbir.gov to learn more if you're doing something, as I mentioned, in the research field, or something that's highly technical, that there could be university technology or something that you built and you are developing in a proprietary way. That is a great avenue to go. And one other tip here is find a research university nearby where you live. I'm in Atlanta, so I got really cozy with the folks at Georgia Tech, and it's oftentimes there is someone on campus whose responsibility it is to help student innovators, faculty, and even entrepreneurs that are on campus to navigate the process of getting these SBIR and STTR grants. So definitely recommend getting close to the universities in your city, figuring out a lot of universities, they will have this research designation, and sometimes they will have a person whose complete job it is to help people understand how to go after these grants. So that's a great, great way to go if you want to get some early funding for your business, and if you want to have a route that isn't as opaque as sometimes funding can be, venture capital funding can be, for example. Another great way to go is pitch competitions. I will say there are a ton at this point of pitch competitions that you can potentially go after. Right now, they're all virtual, so you don't even have to travel anywhere. You just apply and work on your pitch and hopefully get some cash in the door. My word of caution here is I don't particularly care for the pitch competitions where they take equity. I really think the ones where they don't take equity and it's you just show up, you do your pitch, and hopefully you win and you get some cash, those are amazing. So look for pitch competitions as a way to get some early cash in the door. I was able to rack up over $200,000 via pitch competitions when I was building Part Pick, and it was a really great way for me to move the business forward before I raised money for it. The next thing I'm going to talk about is inventory loans and revenue-based financing. So the reason that I bring these up as we talk about navigating barriers is because these types of loans and financing options are typically based on either purchase orders or historical sales data, or basically just data, numbers. So oftentimes you won't see as much bias in this system because it's literally based on what did you sell or what do you have agreements toward that you will sell. So my site recommendation on this one is called intro.me, and it lists out different revenue-based and inventory loans, purchase order loans that you can compare and contrast and see the terms on and make good decisions about the cost of that capital and how you could bring it into your company. And again, a lot of this is strictly based on the numbers. It's based on what you're selling. So there's a little less room for bias because it's pretty much black and white. Okay, and the last non-dilutive resource is my very, very favorite one, is getting more customers. Getting more customers. That is the best, the best solution to navigating barriers in the funding ecosystem is to get more customers, have more revenue. A lot of things can be overcome with the facts of your balance sheet and of your cash flow statements. So make sure that if you have your product ready to go, if you're already selling it, focusing in on your customer and really selling more to your ideal customers, that is the top thing you can do to overcome barriers in the funding ecosystem. Because one, you could use your customer revenue to continue to bootstrap your business, or if you are in the lane where you want to bring in outside investors, the more revenue you have, the more proof points you have of customers who love your product, the easier any funding conversation will be. So that is the number one thing you can do really to navigate barriers in the funding ecosystem. Okay, so as I alluded to before, I want you guys to close your eyes with me for a minute, and we're going to do a little vision exercise. So yeah, close your eyes. Think about yourself and your business in 10 years. What do you see? Are you still running the business day to day? Do you own 100% of the business, or do you own a small percentage of the business? Do you have a big team around you, or do you have maybe just a few employees? Do you see yourself working from the beach, or are you still in the office grinding it out? Do you see yourself ringing the bell on the stock exchange because your company has gone public? Or do you see yourself passing the business on to your children? Think about it. Think about what does 10 years look like from now for yourself and for your business. All right, do you have a picture? Okay, open your eyes. Whatever you saw, this vision should really be the basis for your funding plan for your business. One of the things that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake about is the fact that they just assume, okay, I'm building this business, I need to raise money. Now, let's just say you see yourself owning 100% of your business in 10 years. It is not likely that you can raise money if that's the vision that you see for yourself. Those two things do not go together. If you see yourself owning a large percentage of your business in 10 years, then you should be looking at non-dilutive funding options. if you see yourself ringing the bell and taking your company public, then it will probably make sense for you to look at venture capital as a means to fund your business. So you really just want to make sure that the vision you have, which is your vision, you get to decide as the entrepreneur how you want to grow and scale your business and ultimately what you want it to be. But you want to make sure that what you are doing today, the steps that you're taking, back to that flywheel, those little steps that you're taking every day, really will lead you ultimately to the vision that you see. Okay, so hopefully you thought about that, you answered some of those questions. And after this session, I really encourage you guys to map out, literally write down 5, 10 years from now, where do you see yourself? Where do you see your business? And work backwards from there. Again, if you see yourself, owning a majority of the business, passing it down in your family, you're going to make different decisions about how you fund the business. And the reason I bring this up as a avenue to navigate barriers is because if you don't see yourself having to raise money, then why push yourself through the barriers that will come if you go into that market? So it's really good to kind of know ahead of time, ultimately where you want to be as it relates to the business, and then work your way back from there to decide how you want to go about funding the business. All right, y'all, we have made it through lesson 1. Let's go on to lesson 2. We are going to talk now about navigating procurement. So the procurement process, just so we're all speaking the same language, is really just about how do you sell your product or your service into corporations or companies who may want to buy it. Procurement oftentimes involves buyers at companies. Sometimes there's a procurement officer that's designated at a given company. And so you are going to have to navigate the process of getting to know those people, understanding where they sit in a corporation, and again, recognizing that there can be some bias in this system, just as there's bias in any other system. And I'll just tell you that a lot of times the bias in the procurement industry comes from the reality that people enjoy or prefer to do business with people they know. And if you are new coming into an industry, you're just getting started, maybe you don't know that many people in the space that you're building in, it could be really challenging to sort of wedge your way into a system that's already pretty ironclad built out. And so this whole session is going to be about how do we inch our way in to a system that may be geared more so toward people who have longstanding knowledge or relationships in that space. So we'll talk about how do you perfect your pitch. That is the first step. Is you want to make sure that if you get an opportunity, if you get a meeting, you are ready to go with a great pitch that is undeniable and that will win you that business. You also want to know your audience. So you have to spend your time with people who can make buying decisions. You don't want to be spinning your wheels with folks who don't have the authority to actually say yes. So you want to know your audience and know what they care about. And then the last piece is certifications. So if you have a certification, sometimes it will be women-owned business, Black-owned business, disadvantaged business, minority-owned business. There's a lot of different certifications you can get. If you've done it before, you know it is not an easy process. It takes a long time. There are site visits. It's a lot. But the process is typically worth it because with that in your back pocket, you can have a different type of conversation with the organizations that you may want to be selling into. So we'll go into that as well. All right. So perfecting the pitch. This is so important, both with what we talked about before around funding and with selling into the organizations that you may want to have as your customers. So I'm going to run through pretty quickly a brief kind of outline of what you should be thinking about as you put together your pitch and as you practice your pitch. Number one, you have to find a way to connect. So especially if you're coming in fresh, maybe not knowing the people that you're going to be talking to, it's really important to find some type of common ground. One thing that I like to do before I do any pitch is do a little cyber stalking, see what I can find out about the person, see if there's anything that we might share in common. Think about, where did they grow up? What are their interests? Do they have kids? Like anything that you could potentially connect with, and use that as the in, as you're getting them warmed up. You're really trying to build that rapport. Once you've done that, don't want to let the small talk go on too long. Got things to do. Next, you want to get into why are you here? What is it that you do? Why are you the best person in the world that they should be listening to on this particular topic? And, why should they even care about what it is that you're trying to sell them? And in this time, you may be asking them some questions. You may be trying to understand their needs. So not to say that it's all you talking. Sometimes you'll need to ask questions to better kind of ascertain the next set of questions that you're going to be asking them. Probably the most critical part of the pitch, particularly when you talk about procurement, is the what's in it for me. And when I say me, I'm talking about in the seat of the buyer. Why is it that they should care? Why is it that they should listen? Why is it that they should take that next action? What is your product or service going to do to make their lives or their jobs easier? That's very important for you to pull out and put that up front in your pitch. Next, as you continue to talk to them, one of the big things that you will see in all major organizations or companies is change management. Status quo is easy. It's hard to change from whatever is going on today. So making it super clear why the change will be worth it is very, very important for you to do as you are trying to sell your product or service into a corporation. And then the last and probably, again, most important piece here is ask for the business. I see so many people, they have, a great pitch from the perspective of telling all about the solution and why the buyer should care and all of the right things. And then they just end the meeting and they go and they never hear back and they wonder why. And it's because they never asked for the business. So you have to end every pitch with a very clear next step. So even if maybe you don't want to sell it too hard and you don't want to push, you should at the very least, be clear on when the next conversation is going to happen. You want to make your intentions clear so that it's easier for them to take a next step or next action. All right, so if you hear nothing else from this, make sure when you pitch, you ask for the business. Okay, so here we are with this flywheel again. As you can tell, I like this concept. So this is about the procurement flywheel. And it actually starts the same way the fundraising flywheel did, which is building something of value. So just like when you want to go out and fundraise, you need to have something that is of value to the investor. Similarly, when you go out and sell your product or service, you need to showcase what is valuable about this product or service. That is the key that kicks off the flywheel. Once you've done that, you want to go about identifying decision makers in the corporation that you're trying to sell to. You might call this a lead list that you can work down, but you want to understand as much as you can who are the decision makers, who are the influencers in the organization, and making sure that you get a meeting on their calendar. And one good tip is to make friends with their admins or their personal assistants, because those folks are the ones who actually control the calendars. So if you can get them in your good graces, then you can more easily get a good spot on the calendar. So that's really important, is to know how the organization operates, who makes the decisions. If you've ever been a seller before, you might be familiar with the concept of BANT, budget, authority, need, timeline. That's really critical in this step, is to understand all of those and make sure the person that you're talking to has ability to control the budget, understands the budget, has the authority to actually say yes to the deal, understands the needs of the organization, and you understand the needs of the organization. And then the timeline. This is typically in a procurement scenario, this is where things get a little rocky, is the timeline, because you as the entrepreneur are always going to be on a more urgent timeline, typically, than the people you're selling to. You want to move fast. They are okay taking their precious time. So you want to get to as close of alignment on these areas, because that's really where deals fall through, is at any point where there is a mismatch on any of those levels. The last piece of this procurement flywheel is to do your research and follow up. Okay, back again, we talked about follow-up on the last one. Follow-up is oftentimes where deals die. And in this scenario, your major barrier when it comes to procurement is actually the calendar of the person that you're trying to sell into. It's vacations, it's folks going out on leaves, it is reorgs within the organizations. That is your major barrier. You have got to stay top of mind, and you do that by continuing to follow up and not getting discouraged when you don't hear back the first time. Just be persistent to make sure that those deals get done if you did see interest when you met with them the first time. So that is the procurement flywheel. Last piece here. You want to make it super easy for companies to do business with you. Like I mentioned before, certifications are very arduous. And honestly, I remember going through the certification process for Part Pick, and I thought, okay, they're going to ask me everything. You know, I basically felt like they're trying to get me to sign away my first child. Like, it was very invasive, it felt like at that time, asking me for all the documents that I've ever signed, everything. And, you know, it felt a little tough. But I'll tell you, it was a huge difference maker as far as winning contracts with some of the customers that we had with Part Pick. And it is the current standard for supplier diversity. So if you do want to get into companies that have commitments around working with diverse entrepreneurs, it's really important that you have these certifications. One way to go about getting that and getting guidance on that is to get connected to your local National Minority Supplier Diversity Council, Women Business Enterprise. A lot of times they have state chapters that you can get connected with and get the inside detail as to how to go about getting these certifications and build relationships with the people who actually are doing the certifying. So that, again, is helpful as you kind of navigate the barriers around procurement. And then lastly, you want to develop case studies. So as you win customers, it goes back to having other people do the talking for you. You want to have folks that can say, I've worked with Jewel and I think her product is amazing. It's helped us in this way. It contributed to our bottom line in this way. That is even more compelling than you saying it yourself. And oftentimes companies don't want to be the first. They want to see who else has used your product or service. So the more you can develop case studies, the easier it will be to navigate those barriers in the procurement process. This is the last part of the session today, and it is about building mental fortitude. Like I said, I think this is the most important part of the journey as an entrepreneur. It's been written that grit or mental toughness is more important to the success of an entrepreneur than even intelligence. So building up your mind, letting yourself know that you can make it even through the obstacles, even through the barriers, is so, so critical. So of course, we have another cycle to help you remember how to do this. The first thing I want to tell you about is mastering your mind. I'm going to pause on this one because it is so important. And let me tell you, I'm speaking about this from experience. You have got to speak life, speak great things. Be so much in your own corner and really believe that the goals that you have, the vision that you set, all of these things are achievable. You have got to believe it yourself before you can convince anyone else that it's true. So make sure that you spend time doing that. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's something that you have to continually tell yourself. You are great. You have been given this vision for whatever it is that you're pursuing. You have to continue to feed yourself positivity around these things and talk to yourself, speak to yourself about what it is that you're trying to do and how you're going to get there. You know, the reality is that entrepreneurship is tough. It's really hard. So you have to build your mind up to take on the challenges that are going to come your way. Now, once you've done that, and like I said, that's an ongoing thing. So think about the many steps you can take along the way to get to the point where you have this strong armor that you are equipped with so that when you see those barriers, it doesn't knock you off your game. Once you've done that, then you have to find your cheerleaders. So surround yourself with people, or even if it's just one person who you know you can go to on the days where you're letting that doubt seep in, or you need a little pick-me-up. Who is it in your world that can really provide that for you? You know, in my world, when I was building Part Pick, it was my mom. If I had something going wrong, or if I needed something, she was able to get in my ear and say, "You got this. You are brilliant. You can do this." And that was so important for me to make it through all of the barriers and obstacles that I did face. And then the last thing is you have to celebrate your wins. It is so hard to build a business. So when you get something done, give yourself a pat on the back. Make it so that you are excited about what you're doing. And those little wins and giving yourself a little celebration for the wins can help you to continue that momentum, continue the desire that you have to build whatever it is that you're working on. All right, so we are here coming to the end of the session. I want to remind you guys, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and put some questions in the chat. I know we're coming up on time, but just to wrap things up, my final word to you is that yes, there are barriers, but you can certainly overcome them if you maintain your determination and keep speaking life into whatever it is that you're doing. You know, the barriers exist, and I hope, and we all hope, that the system will change over time. But until then, we all have to stay focused on our goals and not let the realities of the world that we live in get us down or knock us off what we're doing. So anticipate, you know that the barriers are going to come, know that they're going to come, and move past them anyway. Do not let them distract you. Navigate. I've given you guys some tools: finding champions, perfecting your pitch, building good relationships to sell your product, and move right through and around those barriers. Overcome. Use all these tools at your disposal to conquer those barriers. Tell them to kick rocks, keep it moving, and really just continue what you are doing. And lastly, never stop building. You have something great inside you. Keep on going, keep iterating, keep learning, and make it happen. Make it all happen. All right, so thank you guys so much for sticking with me through the last hour. It's been amazing to talk to you guys. Of course, again, please keep the conversation going on T-Mobile for Business. Don't forget to join us for next week's webinar as well. And we're just so excited to have spent this time with you. Thank you guys.